Hi, and welcome to episode 6 of the Linux Shelter. The first story today I had to include just because I think it's hilarious. I don't know everything about this story, but I saw it on Twitter. A newspaper cutting of a woman describing what sounded an awful lot like the Linux boot sequence, where she said that a guy booted a laptop and it was covered in lines of code and there was no graphics and no internet and no anything, and it must have been some kind of encryption. And then possibly people were linking this to possible terrorism or terrorists. It's like, wow. Okay, just because you see a text boot screen does not mean that something is terrorism or something is wrong or something is really bad. I mean, I've done stuff where I've been compiling in a cafe and someone's come up to me like, "You're hacking, aren't you?" It's like, no, I'm not hacking. Okay, occasionally I have actually said that I am hacking, but that's a different topic. Anyway, I just thought I would include that because I thought it was hilarious that some person sees the Linux boot screen that is text rather than graphics and they automatically assume that must be terrorism. Okay, moving on. Linux Mint servers were hacked last week and users were attacked. Apparently on the 20th of February, fake ISOs with a backdoor were put on Linux Mint's website. From what I've read from the Linux Mint blog, the IP traces back to Bulgaria. The Linux Mint team are investigating this and they will contact the authorities if more hacks happen. And it's a really, really shitty thing for someone to do. I mean, Linux Mint is a really, really cool project. I don't currently use it, but I have used it in the past. I think it's really awesome. Yeah, this attack is... You're an asshole if you do this, basically. Yeah, I mean... The thing that I don't get is why would you attack Linux users? I mean, yes, we're a passionate group of users, but we're also a tiny group of users. I mean, I guess they attacked Mint because Mint is like one of the most popular distros out there at the moment, and did they try to attack Ubuntu first? Or, I don't know. Yeah, it just seems... It's a really shit thing for someone to do, and I'm not sure what they were trying to achieve with this. It's weird to me. I mean, yeah. Next, NVIDIA may or may not be creating a Linux distro. It's supposed to be called NLinux, and it's designed for gamers. Some people have been saying that this could be fake because it wouldn't work very well with the NVIDIA Shield, which is their big platform that they've got going for them. And a lot of people are angry, saying, why don't you just make good drivers for Linux and let us decide which distro we're going to use those drivers on? Which I think is a really, really good point. And a lot of people are doubting whether this is even real or not. Which, I don't know. I don't know whether or not NVIDIA would get anything out of creating their own distro. I mean, I guess it would be a lot of work for them, with not a lot of payoff unless they were going to integrate some kind of store with it themselves. But I don't know. I'm not sure whether this is fake or real. I guess we'll just have to keep an eye out. Moving on. The software behind Futurama and Spirited Away is to become open source. Toons is the animation software that Studio Ghibli used, and it was also used to create Futurama. It used to cost $10,000 per license, and the Studio Ghibli version, which is out later this month, will be free to use, but you will have to pay for tech support. I think that's really cool that you have now got professional grade animation software being made available to people who want to use it. That's really, really good. It's like I was saying last episode and the episode before that open source really does allow people to innovate that want to innovate. And what normal hobbyist animator is going to be able to afford $10,000 per license? I can't think of anyone that would be able to afford $10,000 for a piece of software that they're going to use as a hobbyist. But if you open source it, you've got people that are ridiculously talented that can now get their hands on this software, be at the same level as professionals, and maybe make something better than professionals. I really, really like this. I think it's really cool. I don't do animation much myself. I used to dabble with it. I may have to download this and have a play with it. Okay, moving on to Microsoft news. Microsoft are going to open source something called Sonic. It's a networking component. I don't really know too much about it, but so what? I know I'm really for open sourcing stuff like tunes, but networking components, and unless it's something amazing that the world has never seen before, who cares that Microsoft are open sourcing this? Apparently some people are saying that they've open sourced it so that they can learn from the community how to make it better. I mean, my first thought when I read that was, is this Microsoft's plan, why they're open sourcing so much? And we're getting on to something else about this later. And are they trying to open source stuff so that they can pick the community's brains and basically we made this, it's the best we can do, how would you guys make it better? If that's what they're doing, that's a really shitty thing to do as well. Some people are saying that Microsoft are trying to become an open source company, and I say BS over that. I don't believe Microsoft have got any intentions of ever becoming an open source company. I put more faith in the fact that they're trying to pick the community's brains and find out from us how to make their shit better. To me, that makes more sense as to why they would open source all these things. And you have to remember that they get $1 billion a year from Samsung over Android patents. That's not a very open sourcey friendly thing to do, really, is it? If you wanted to become an open source company that is respected in the community, throwing software patent cases and suits all over the place, that is not, or threatening to throw them all over the place, that's not a very friendly community kind of thing to do. Moving on, in related news, Microsoft are going to open source an AI platform based on Minecraft. Basically, you get standard Minecraft and you run a patch on the Java version, and you can teach AI agents about the world. It will run on Windows and Linux, and you can use any programming language to code the agents in. And rather annoyingly, it sounds quite good, actually. And I am very interested in AI. I've dabbled in AI, I've written some basic AI in the past, and this sounds really cool, that you could basically teach AI about the world and how to do things in Minecraft, which is awesome because it's a massively open area and creative space that you can do things that... The example that I read was that if you were going to use a robot to learn how to climb up a hill, you would need to build a robot, you would need to fix it every time it fell down the hill. I'm not sure Minecraft is particularly the best way to teach a robot how to climb a hill, because hills are generally smooth and Minecraft hills really are not. But beside that point, in this you could just get the robot to run over the hill again and again and again and again, and you wouldn't need to fix it, you wouldn't need to worry about it, you could just let it be free to figure out how to do that, which is pretty cool. unless there happens to be a massive hole in the hill, and then the robot learns how to fall really quickly into a cave and be attacked by creepers and zombies and skeletons. But anyway, yeah, that definitely sounds interesting. Moving on, and a lot faster than I anticipated. Actually, this might be a really short episode. More developers are using Windows 7 and OS X than Linux. 26% of developers are using OS X, 22.5% of developers are using Windows 7, and 21.7% of developers are using Linux. Yeah, this is interesting. I've always thought like real hardcore developers use Linux. Apparently more hardcore developers use Windows 7, which is kind of worrying because Windows 7 is an absolute pile of shit. I know, I tried using it, it was awful. Actually, Windows 7 was the thing that made me switch to Linux. Interesting fact. Because I spent 20 minutes trying to get the damn thing to boot, and it was like, please register, and setting up and installing, and I was like, after 20 minutes, you know what, I actually want to use my laptop fresh out the box, not sit around learning how all of the benefits of Windows on an install screen. So I put Linux on a USB key and booted it, and that's how I got started on Linux. True story. But yeah, so no, I'm confused by this. I'm not sure that it's an accurate reflection of the developer community. I don't really buy that more developers are using Windows 7 than Linux. That just seems bizarre. Although, I guess the good news is that more developers are using Linux than are using Windows 10 and Windows 8, which I guess is kind of a good thing. Okay, and last up on this, what is going to be a really short episode of the Linux podcast, not the Linux podcast at all, that is definitely not my name, the Linux Shelter, much more accurate. Why do you use Linux and open source is my big question of the week. I'd love to get feedback on this. Personally, as I said earlier, I started using Linux because my Windows 7 machine decided that it was just going to sit there and install and set up Windows when I actually just wanted to get on and use it. So yeah, I shoved Puppy Linux on a USB key and I've been really happy ever since. I really like Linux because it's so much fast. My Linux partition is so much faster than my Windows partition. I mean, most of the stuff that I do on Windows, I end up sitting around waiting for it to do stuff. With Linux, stuff just opens like that. Maybe there's a little bit of lag, but nothing even close to how slow things are on Windows. So yeah, I really like open source because I think it lets creative people be creative. I think that if you put something out there and say, hey guys, this is really cool, this is what I made, take it away if you want to and do something else with it, that's awesome. And that lets everybody innovate, and it lets everybody be able to play around with stuff that maybe they wouldn't be able to play around with if open source wasn't a thing. I mean, you look at some of the really cool, like not open source necessarily, but open license projects that are going around at the moment. Like the one that comes to mind for me is Moby's royalty-free program he's got going, which I think is really cool. That if you're an up-and-coming film student, or you're doing a project and you want to use some of Moby's music, you just sign up for this project and you can use pretty much anything from Moby's back catalogue without having to pay royalties. I think that's really cool. It's not quite open source, but it's kind of like in the same vein, in the same area. In Creative Commons, there is so much good music on Jamendo, I use Jamendo a lot to find stuff. One of my favourite artists on Jamendo is Pornophonic, and I really love their album. I think it's great. I think it's up there with a professional grade album. I would buy it if it was in the shops. Yes, I have been to their site and I have paid for a copy, because I do believe in supporting artists. So yeah, that's why I use Linux and open source. I use it because I really believe in creativity and being able to take things that other people have made and play with them and spin that into your own thing. I think that's a really cool attitude. It's something you can't do on a closed source system like Windows. I mean, you couldn't take Windows 10, and as free as it is, and as much as Windows and Microsoft love open source, you can't take Windows 10, tweak it and redistribute it so that it's a better version of Windows 10. You just can't do that. But you could take Ubuntu 16.04 when it comes out later next month. You could take that and you could go, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, and recreate that into something that you like and put it out there. And that's an awesome thing. I mean, it's really cool that the community lets you do that. Okay, I think that's going to be it for this week's really short episode. I'm sorry it's so short. I wish it had been longer. I will try better next week to make a longer episode for you guys. And I should also mention, this episode is available on YouTube, unedited and unplayed with, so if you really want to see what I look like, then you can. Yeah. Okay, so that's it. I hope you have a good week, and I will see you next week. Bye!